Hello, and welcome to the Christian Faith Publishing Author Roundtable. I'm your host, Chris Baker, and for the next half hour, we'll be speaking with several very talented authors about their newly released books, what their inspiration was for creating their unique stories, and why it would be a great book for you to read and share with your friends and family. For anyone that's gone through a life-altering event, or if anyone that have ever wondered what would I do if some life-altering event came into my life, I think they're really going to be interested in this next book. The book is called Promises Unbroken by Jan Britton Garner. Jan, thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for this opportunity, Chris. I appreciate it.
Now tell everybody a little bit about this story.
This story is about a young college student named Elizabeth. She's from a small southern town in Georgia, and she goes home on spring break, and while she is there, she experiences something very tragic, and it changes her whole life. In the story, it's about love, fear, faith, extreme courage, and through the guidance of her family, her church family, and the Lord, He helps her to rely on Him. He helps her to get through this experience, and it changes who she is, but it will change her for the better. The Lord is very faithful to her, and He teaches her day by day how to handle the situation.
Now, what made you want to write this story? What inspired you?
What inspired me came from a dream that the Lord had gave me, and I give Him all the glory for that. I believe, Chris, not only in our lives, but other people's lives, we go through hard times. Change can come real quickly, and we don't understand, what's happened. But in this story and what God has taught me in my own life is to rely on Him. The Word of God talks about a scripture in there where it says that He has a plan for our lives, and He has good thoughts for us, not bad thoughts, but good thoughts to bring us to a place where He knows that we should be. So that's what inspired me is His faithfulness, not only to me, but to other people that's in my life. Now,
this main character, Elizabeth, was it one of those situations where you were able to put a little bit of yourself into that main character?
Some of it. My mother has always told me, she said, Jan, whatever happens in your life, take it day by day and trust God in your life. And Elizabeth has a difficult time in the story, trusting the Lord through the story. But towards the end, she finds out just how faithful that He is. And even in my own life, I don't know if anybody else questions sometimes what happens in their life, and they'll ask God, where are you and why is this happening? But the older that I have become, I have found out that He never changes. He keeps His promises to us. So I draw a little bit from her too, yeah. Also, I draw from, my mother her faith in God is unshakable. And she has taught not only me, but my brothers and sisters and my family to rely on the Lord.
Now, is this your first book?
It is my first book. It is my first book and a very scary process.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing on getting this book made?
They made me feel so comfortable. And anytime that I needed anything or any question I needed to be answered, they were right there. And they're very thorough. My publicist, Laura, has been just great, just fantastic, and I really appreciate every opportunity that they have given me.
Now, when people pick up this book, Promises Unbroken, what do you hope is the most important message they get from reading it?
First and foremost, I want to help lead somebody to Jesus Christ so they will accept Him as their Savior. Second, I want to bring hope to those that are going through difficult times in their lives and encourage them to trust in God and His plan for them. I promise He will not fail them, but will help them and will never leave their side. Just like I said, Chris, change will come into our lives, but one thing that is constant, and that is Jesus Christ and His love for us. That's what I want to bring hope.
I think hope is a powerful thing, and I think people are really going to enjoy this book and gain a lot of hope from it. The book is called Promises Unbroken by author Jan Britton Garner. You can pick it up at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, a few of the online sources, as well as the brick-and-mortar stores. And Jan, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Now on the Christian Faith Publishing Author Roundtable, a book I'm really excited to talk about. Sounds like a fun read. The book is called I Want to Be a Dolphin by Terrilyn S. Alexander. Terrilyn, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you.
Now tell everybody a little bit about this story.
Well, my story is a children's book, and my story is about a boy named Matt who wants to become a dolphin. And it's also about dreams, family, and believing that dreams can come true, that they can come true.
Now, what made you want to write this? What inspired you?
To start part of my mother was the first inspiration for me. She instilled in me and my siblings the importance of reading and writing at an early age. And I also used to read stories to my family when I was a child, just for entertainment. And the real inspiration for the book, I Want to Be a Dolphin, came from my son, actually. We were watching a documentary about dolphins, and he was 8 at the time. He's now 16. But at that time, as it states in the book, when the program ended, he said, "Mom, I want to be a dolphin." I told him, "You can't be a dolphin." But he insisted he wanted to be a dolphin. So while I was in the kitchen cooking, the story came to life. It just sprang out of nowhere and came to life. It was so vivid, and I stopped what I was doing, and I raced to write it down. And that's how that was born. And although my husband did not inspire me to write my story, he was a great inspiration also, helping my story come to life. Because after being tucked away for many years, I took the manuscript out and read it to him, and afterwards he said, "Terry, you should get that story published." And I did.
Now, of course, being a focus of this book, how important is it for kids to be dreamers and to dream things like, even if it seems silly to us adults, like things like wanting to be a dolphin, how important is that for kids these days to really have that sense of wonder and dreaming?
Oh, that's vitally important, Chris, because as adults, we don't dream anymore. And I know when I was a child, I did dream, but somehow with the way today is children with all the chaos and different things going on in the world, they don't get a chance to dream. So the importance is that they do dream, or when they grow up, they won't really have a compass to direct them in the way that they should go. So with I Want to Be a Dolphin, I'm hoping to tap into that sponge of theirs, because children are very spongy at that time and they absorb a lot. So I'm hoping that this story could tweak their dream and they could hold on to that dream as they grow up.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to have this idea for this story and then to finally have the finished product in front of you?
Oh, Chris, from start to finish, my publicist, Taylor Burke, and the entire Christian Faith Publishing staff, they demonstrated superior professionalism, integrity, thoughtfulness, and timeliness in publishing my book. And getting my book published was one of the best decisions I've ever made. It was actually surreal at first, and then it became magical, Chris, because every single step came to life just as I had envisioned it. Christian Faith Publishing has a knack for seeing through the author's lens, somehow knowing exactly what the author is trying to convey through their story and their illustration. This was very appealing to me.
What kind of kids do you think are going to enjoy this book the most?
Well, my target audience are children ages 3 to 8 years, because they are the age where they are just beginning to dream. And I believe that the younger you plant the seed of dreaming in children, the better. That's what I believe.
What do you hope is the most important message, whether it be kids or adults, get from this book?
The most important message I hope young readers will get from my book is to always dream, because dreams do come true, and that no matter how wonderful the dream, it's valueless without family. Also, if their dream is to be a writer, I want them to always remember this, Chris, always write from the heart.
Well, I think that is some good advice. Now, the book is called I Want to Be a Dolphin by author Terilyn S. Alexander. You can pick it up today at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, a few of the online places, as well as the brick-and-mortar stores. And Terilyn, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
The next book we're going to talk about on the Christian Faith Publishing Author Roundtable, I think an excellent resource for any youth out there that are looking to make their way and keys for success. The book is called Young Christian Entrepreneurs Handbook for Success, How to Remake Yourself, Dream Big, and Achieve Your Purpose by author Paul Music. Paul, thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Now tell everybody a little bit about this book.
Well, I wrote this book really for the parents out there that want the best for their kids, and grandparents that are worried about their grandchildren's futures, and also for children that still maybe lost and look for direction. And honestly, for them to understand and fall in love with, again, the Bible, understand that the Lord our Father wants the very best for us, and He clearly has got a plan for us, and we can link the Bible back to success. And so I just wanted to put it down in words and used it in my life, and have found it to be where my success came from.
Now, what inspired you to write this? Where did it all begin?
I was reading several different authors and really doing quite a bit of Bible studies. And, for example, Norman Vincent Peale talked about it. And I've read a number of other secular type books, and they talk about success. And for me, those don't have true direction. In this world, there maybe find success in those books, but as far as everlasting success, I believe that our true riches come from heaven, and that that have generational wealth to pass down this knowledge about Christ and success to our children, their children, is really in the Bible. So I wanted to write a real simple, clear message to the youth of America, and I wanted to pass along to my children as well. So my book is real simple, and it has some basic connections. It has Bible verses, some Bible stories, and each chapter I have a challenge for the reader. So I wanted to really help America. I feel like today's children, seems like they don't have direction, goals, motivation. If you would ask them who wants to be rich, I think they all would raise their hands. But how are they going to get there? So this book really sets out a way for them to achieve their goals in life. I really wrote it for those to kind of pick up and really write their own story. And I talk about it, dream big and remake yourself. Where do you want to be? So it's not really about me and my past or my success, and it's just really about them creating their future for themselves.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to have this idea for this book, and then to finally have it in your hands and to be able to share this with everyone?
Yeah, no, I appreciate all the help through the process, and I think what really came real was when they did the cover art. I really appreciate the art they did on the front of the book, and yeah, being my first experience, I didn't know what to expect, but it just it's quite something else when they hand you and send to you the first copy of the book you've been working on together. So I appreciate all their help.
Now, is this something you'd like to do again? Maybe write another book in the same vein, or like you said, you've written books for your kids to see them published?
When I wrote the book, I really wrote it with the whole concept behind YCE, which was Young Christian Entrepreneurs. And in fact, I created a website for it because I really want that to take off more than necessarily the book. I really built the book around the idea of succeeding with the YCE concept of helping those across the country to get involved. Now, I wanted to hear, hopefully my goal is that they have success, and then they're able to give back to other young entrepreneurs who are getting started. So my goal is 1,000 kids are listening right now, or parents are listening right now, and this one or two of them this reaches, and they go out and succeed, and they share their success stories with more kids. I just would love that to be the next book I was to write.
The book is called Young Christian Entrepreneurs, Handbook for Success by author Paul Music. You can pick it up today at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and Kobo, the online platforms, as well as the brick and mortar stores. And Paul, thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time. Hope you have a blessed day.
And now on the Christian Faith Publishing Author Roundtable, a book I'm interested to talk about for anyone who's really, let their history or their struggles feel like, they're just too much, you're never alone. And that's kind of the message of this book. The book is called God is My Light, Volume 1 by Shamika Sidney. Shamika, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, tell everybody a little bit about this book, because this is the first in a 7-volume series that you're starting.
Yes. Volume 1 is basically about knowing God's Word. The first volume, why knowing God's Word, the Bible, is important and beneficial to us as His people in creation. The main ingredient that starts any ship or relationship, fellowship, friendship, kingship, or lordship is communication. In the beginning, God communicated with Adam in the garden. He told Noah to build an ark. He spoke to Moses in a burning bush. He promised Abraham a son. Paul heard his voice on the way to Damascus. So every relationship, the main ingredient is communication. Soldiers on the battlefield need to receive communications from headquarters to follow the right directions and tactics. A pilot needs clear directions from air traffic control to position a plane for safe takeoff or landing. A marriage needs good communication to stay healthy and strong. So as God's people or creation, we meant to be in a relationship with God, communicating with Him always. So we are to communicate with Him in every season of our life, whether it's trial or triumph. Our relationship and communication with God is the most valuable treasure that we could possess. God's Word, the Bible, is one way that God communicates with us through human authors.
Now, what inspired you to write this book? What was it things going on in your own personal life or things you'd experienced? How did things get started, and what made you want to write this?
Basically, Chris, I started out writing poetry. I was inspired after a person that really planted the seed of God's Word in my life had passed. So I didn't want to speak at the funeral because I knew I would not be strong enough to stand there and give a speech. So the family asked me to say something. So I decided to do a poem in her honor.
So it started with poetry. And then after that, I had people along the way, years, kept telling me that I worked with, they could not understand the Bible. So based off that, I prayed about ways that I could break the Bible down to be understanding to people using practical and simplified message based off my own life and intertwining scriptures.
Who do you think is going to gain the most from reading this book? Who's kind of like your target reader?
Any and everyone who is willing, who has an open heart and willing to accept God and His Word. A believer will appreciate it more because it'll remind them of God's Word and promises, things that we forget when the storms of life approach us, situations and crises hit us. A non-believer would appreciate the book because it gives them a firm foundation, gives them understanding of God's Word, what is the purpose and what was the plan behind us as creation or humans, and future plans, present plans, the past plans. So it gives a strong foundation to anyone.
I think this whole series, this book, God is My Light, and the books to come are going to be a great blessing to people and bring a lot of insight and understanding into to God and His Word. The book is called Volume 1, God is My Light, by author Shamika Sidney. You can pick it up today at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, just a few of the online platforms, as well as the brick-and-mortar stores. And thanks for being on the show today, Shamika.
Thank you, and have a great day.
These days, we constantly hear the debate over our Constitution and the Founding Fathers' intent in creating our nation and the role of Christianity that played in that creation. That's why I'm excited to talk about this next book. The book is called Rebellion to Tyrants is Obedience to God, the Role of Christianity in the American Revolution, by author Daniel Stackhouse Jr., Ph.D. Daniel, thanks for being on the show today.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Now, tell everybody a little bit about your book.
Well, basically, it's a book about mainly the American Revolution and the role of Christian thought, Christian preaching, and even Christian practice on an individual level, and how it played a part. I don't say it was the only part or even the biggest part, but I think it played a part in the founding of our country, and also how it has developed since. And I think it's a story that is either often minimized or not told at all, and I wanted to make sure I could try to tell people all about it.
Now, what inspired you to write this? What was the beginnings of this book and the journey you took to write it?
I've always been interested in history ever since I was a kid, and in my own private studies, I would discover things reading either authors I hadn't been exposed to in school or primary sources, and I started seeing a lot of things that I didn't hear in my classes and see in my textbooks. The standard line in school we're taught is that all the founders were deists, where they believe in a God, but it's sort of this distant clockmaker God who sort of winds up his creation and lets it go. He doesn't get involved in the affairs of mankind. He certainly doesn't answer prayer or anything like that. And I began to discover a lot of evidence that I thought that's not 100% true. At best, it's an exaggeration. But I think the thing that really triggered it is one day I was in a class, a graduate school seminar in American history, and I tried to bring up this line of thought in class, and I was quickly shut down by my professor, who told me that, well, in no uncertain terms, he didn't respect people who thought that way, and he wouldn't tolerate any dissent in the class, and that's when I knew I had to write a book someday. Now,
is this something you'd like to write more about, the American Revolution, or do you have any other books lined up in the future?
My other great interest besides the American Revolution and early American history, I'm very interested in the Cold War, and I'm thinking my next book's probably going to focus on the Reagan administration and the plan that they had, the strategy they had to sort of confront communism during the last days of the Cold War. That's kind of on the back burner, in the back of my mind, but I think that's where I'm headed next.
Now, when people read this book, Rebellion to Tyrants is Obedience to God, what do you hope is the most important message they get from it?
I hope they understand that it wasn't just luck that the American Revolution turned out so differently from, say, the French Revolution or the Russian Revolution. Okay, those revolutions were explicitly anti-religious and even atheistic in their motivations. We're talking about, Notre Dame Cathedral was turned into some temple of the goddess of some pagan goddess or something. The Russians took over the churches and created museums to atheism, but the American Revolution, you think of a revolution, you think a great upheaval, a great upturning. But there were certain things that the Americans held on to. And I argue that was these Judeo-Christian principles that sort of allow for people to practice self-government and enjoy their liberty, but yet without abusing their liberty or abusing the liberties of others. And I hope they understand that while you can have a secular government, if you have a secular society, a completely secular society, that you may want to think about that. You do that at your own peril.
The book is called Rebellion to Tyrants is Obedience to God, The Role of Christianity in the American Revolution by author Daniel S. Stackhouse, Jr., Ph.D. You can pick it up at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, a few of the online platforms, as well as brick-and-mortar stores. And Daniel, thanks for being on the show today.
Chris, thank you. It was a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
And now on the Christian Faith Publishing Author Roundtable, a very interesting book I'm excited to talk about. The book is called Balancing the Dream, The Images and Experiences of a First-Generation Cuban American by author Elizabeth Perez Robertson. Elizabeth, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's certainly a privilege.
Now tell everybody a little bit about this book and the story.
So the book came about as I was writing my dissertation, as I was completing my doctorate in educational leadership. And as an educator, I'm in my 32nd year of teaching and also serving as an administrator. I realized that there really wasn't much out there regarding the identity of our students as it pertains to ethnicity and how they're trying to balance two identities within the school environment and also at home. And just knowing and seeing what's happening in the news recently with a lot of new immigrants and so forth, and how we really need to evolve as a group of educators and recognizing how that has an impact on student learning. I tried to put my focus on that and really try to see the student as a whole child.
Now, when you started writing this book, what was kind of the impetus? What really kick-started the whole thing?
That's a great question, because I always try to see from what lens can I really bring my own experience to the classroom and have others who perhaps are not in education realize what it means to really touch a child at all levels. And so I look back at my own experience. My parents had come to the U.S. as political refugees from Cuba, escaping a regime that did not allow for free thought and practice of whatever religious affiliation and so forth. And I really wanted to bring to the forefront that how could someone really know who they were and continue to learn in life without knowing where they came from? And so in looking at balancing the life that I had at home, I was born in the U.S., knowing, however, that my parents wanted me to maintain as many of my cultural experiences and so forth as possible, and also knowing that at school I needed to build that identity as well. I thought, well, why not do something that touches everyone? We're all curious of where we came from and how we can continue to learn and carry those experiences through our own lives and carry that on to our own children that we have later in life.
Now, when somebody's looking for a book, whether it's on the bookshelf at the bookstore or online, who do you think who's like your target reader? Who do you think is going to gain the most from reading this story?
Sure. My hope is that it touches everyone that comes and can see that balance. It's not trying to tell one story as being right or wrong. It's basically what we all encounter every day is we're trying to seek that balance and trying to see what direction should we go in terms of developing who we are and knowing that the support, I say it flat out, the support that I know that only God can offer me, and just wanting to make sure that people don't forget where they came from and that they want to go back. And even if they have been in the U.S. for several generations, someone had to have that faith to come and actually take that challenge on to be able to stick to who they are, but also acclimate and be able to create that balance.
Well, I tell you what, to me, there's such a leap of faith involved in coming to a new country, and for people that have to be able to keep that sense of identity and keep that sense of who you are and where you've come from is so important. And I think everyone's going to be really blessed to read about this and read this book. The book is called Balancing the Dream: The Images and Experiences of a First-Generation Cuban American by author Elizabeth Perez Robertson. You can get it today at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, a few of the online platforms, as well as their brick-and-mortar stores. And Elizabeth, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Blessings to everyone in this holiday season.
Thank you so much for joining us for the Christian Faith Publishing Author Roundtable. We'll be back next week with another great group of talented authors to discuss their books, their process, and how they were able to get their manuscripts published and out there for the world to enjoy. If you're a writer that is looking for a book publisher, give Christian Faith Publishing a call today at 1-800-955-3794 to receive a free publishing kit, or feel free to visit them on the web at ChristianFaithPublishing.com. Have a great weekend, everyone.